Welcome back to the Mental Game Gym podcast. I am your host and mental performance coach, Andrew Crohm. And today I'm joined by a special guest who's bringing serious value when it comes to performing under pressure, both on and off the field. I'm talking with Kevin Farrell, a longtime baseball coach and R2MR master trainer from Newfoundland. Kevin works with athletes to help them build the skills that don't show up on the stat sheet. Things like self-talk, focus recovery, and handling stress when the game is on the line. He blends the physical coaching with the mental resilience training, and his approach is all about helping athletes show up with more composure, confidence, and control. In this episode, we dive into the Big 4+ tools from R2MR, how to reset when your mind starts spiraling, and why emotional control might just be the most important skill an athlete can learn, as well as self-talk. This episode is for anyone who wants to perform at a higher level, whether it's in sport or outside of sport. So let's get into today's episode with my guest, Kevin Farrell. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Mental Game Gym podcast. Today I am joined, as you can see, by Kevin Farrell. How are you, Kevin?
Good. And yourself today?
I'm good. Yeah, dropped the kids off at school and now we're here. So, thank you, first of all, for joining us today.
It's nice to be on. I've been following your podcast for a while now, and it's doing a lot of good things. I've been, like, the people you're getting in, it's giving a lot of really good, valuable information. So when you reached out to me, I was totally honored, more so than anything else, to be a part of this. So thank you.
Yeah, great. That's good to hear because, the main reason that I wanted to do this was to share some skills and help people. That's ultimately why I'm doing this. I could have used it when I was younger, so I'm giving back, hopefully, to not just athletes, but also parents and coaches as well. So, okay, well, let's start with can you give us an introduction about yourself, what you do now, how you got into that?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Kevin Farrell. I am a master trainer with the Road to Mental Readiness, which is a Department of National Defense specialized program when it comes to mental resiliency and recovery and working with that with first responders. And typically that's kind of how I got into all this. So I started coaching in early 90s for me. Literally started coaching baseball, regional level, kids, working your way up through the system, some Atlantic, some national championships. I played myself. I was a pitcher, I was a catcher, I played multiple positions and always just had that like love for the sport, right? And when it came to very much like yourself, when it came to the mental health component of the sport, I didn't really have a lot of knowledge because back then there wasn't very much. And looking back in my career, I kind of realized that I was able to tie the two together. So I was able to bring the R2MR kind of to light. And since then, that's kind of where I've been. I've been just basically volunteering and doing a lot of my time working with kids programs, working with athletes one-on-one, as well, and just basically giving information sessions as to how to deal with mental resiliency. And like, truthfully, like that is the biggest impact, in my opinion, when it comes to the kids. In sport is it's not their performance. Everybody thinks everything is performance-based. It's performance-based. But at the end of the day, if you actually look, these athletes don't get worse just because of one game. They get stressed in one game and their stress response takes over and that affects their performance. So most of what we teach goes off of Yertz Dotson, and that's just kind of me.
Okay. So, because you're so into baseball and as time of recording, Blue Jays made it to the World Series 2 nights ago. So can you give me some kind of thoughts on that? Because I'm not Canadian. I've lived in Canada for 10 years and I've followed the Blue Jays since I got here. And, there's been quite, apart from a couple of years, it's been kind of not very good. How do you feel about this current group? How does it compare to others that have gone before it?
To be honest, it's actually really fitting based off of what you and I do and what we teach when it comes to the mental bullpen sessions and what I teach when it comes to R2MR, believe it or not. John Schneider at the start of this year adapted the WIN method. What's important now? We really work on that. That was from Louis Holtz. And we use that on a regular basis when it comes to our kids and with our programs. And I truly think that was the start of the season. Once he started getting his players into that mindset, that mental prep, that focus, that what's important now, not to dwell in the past, not to beat yourselves up, not to go through the routines. And what they realized in that was the next play is the most important thing. So it's not their hit, it's the one coming behind. So they have to set each other up, and it becomes a team game in that aspect. And I truly think the Blue Jays for a very long time were chasing the long ball. And so many people talked about the structure of the game and how it's changing. And I totally agree. I love the home run. I love it. It's a big part of the game. But at the end of the day, when you have 14 players on the bench and all 14 players are getting into every single game or most of for the
Yeah,
entire season, and all of them are contributing, you bring your team together as a whole. And that's what I truly believe you're getting out of the Blue Jays this year. You're getting a whole team, you're getting a full effort, and everybody is focused and dialed in. And who's not, they don't have them playing. If you're focused and dialed in mentally, you're dialed in physically. And I think the Blue Jays really understood that this year, in my opinion, from what I saw. And that's where the small ball and that's where the rest of the team play kind of came from. If you really look at like John Schneider's approach was really unconventional, because essentially it's like what you would do with a youth baseball team. You would include everybody in different parts of the game. And he
yeah,
did that very well throughout the season. And I truly believe bringing the team aspect and using everybody in that genre is really what the Blue Jays success has been. It's been the mental positivity.
for sure. And you saw that in game 7, right? In that seventh, was it the 7th inning, right? When they
Yeah.
went ahead. Like the bottom of the order were those were the guys that were getting onto base.
And that's the thing, like it's everybody has to contribute. And at the end of the
Yeah,
day, a baseball is an individual sport played as a team. It's not a team sport. It's an individual sport is played as a team. And as you start to realize that the more you contribute to the team aspect of it, the better it happens, the game changes completely. And I think they saw that. Like coming up, Jimenez hit 2 home runs already in the series and lays down an absolute beautiful sacrifice bunt to set up that play. So like,
yeah,
again, going back to the mental prep aspect, George Springer approached the plate. And when he was interviewed, he stated, my job was to drive in the runner from third. He wasn't
yeah,
trying to do anything special. He was trying to drive in the runner from third because that was what his job was. In the moment, that changes your swing, that changes your approach, and that puts you in such a better mindset because you're not trying to do too much. You're just trying to do one thing at a time. And because of that, great things have been happening. So I'm loving the baseball. I got to say, my wife and I watch it all the time. Our kids do too. And it's something we don't miss, but this has been a fantastic year for sure.
yeah. It sure has. And when you mentioned the it's a team sport, but you're playing it a lot of the time individually, and when you do kind of have that togetherness and that trust and that teamwork, you're sacrificing for other people, and it really helps kind of take a lot of that pressure off because there's people behind you. You know that
Absolutely.
there's people backing you up.
Absolutely. There are other organizations, and I'm not going to name them because I do also appreciate every player that's in the league, but there are other organizations that run their organizations based off of 1 or 2 players. And those players have insurmountable amounts of stress on their shoulders.
Yeah,
And if they don't perform in that moment, people get mad. But at the end of the day, you don't realize that the fact that you're putting that extra stress on them literally tips them outside that optimal performance zone when it comes to your Stotson. Now they cannot perform. There's no physical possible way they can perform at their best. Versus if you take a team approach, like you just said, you're literally everybody is just doing their job. And
for
it
sure.
becomes such a fun environment. And that's the thing you saw that everybody in Canada has seen. And one thing I've promoted to my kids as I coach this year was watch how fun the Blue Jays are having. Look how much fun they're having. And it speaks volumes to the positive mental dugout will give you positive results.
For sure. That's one of the things I ask the athletes is like, why do you do it, right? And most of the time they say, because it's fun. But, obviously it's not fun when things aren't going your way and you're having a bad performance. but it's important to realize why you're doing this, right? So kind of making sure they're aware of what they're doing it for. And usually it's fun. And most people quit the sport because it's not fun anymore.
And that's a big part is what we're seeing now is a lot of the youth
Yeah.
are quitting before we even started. Years
Yeah.
ago, we never started sport till like 12 or 13 when it came to like school organized sport. Now the kids have 5 years experience by the time they hit that age. But the reality of it is it becomes work. Kids don't want to work at that age. Kids want to play. And if
Yeah.
you can make things fun and still make them productive, I think that's where you truly develop the dynasties and that's where you truly develop the good athletes. Because at the end of the day, they are kids. And we have to remember that they're just kids. So it's a big part of that.
For sure. Yeah. No, I think the stat that I saw recently was about 70% of kids by the age of 13 have quit organized sports. And that is probably higher than that today. So yeah, I think that's something that I try and help with is how can we improve that fun and take the emphasis off of the results and the stats, because that's kind of where most of the focus is, and that's why people feel that pressure and it's not fun. And you said it feels like work, but
It
they're
really
young.
does. They're kids, right?
Yeah.
And like I took that same approach with my little league team this year. And it was very much like highlighting the positives in everything. So you struck out, great cut, like you made an effort in the outfield, you dropped the ball. Yeah, but you made a great effort, great hustle, good job. And it's just a matter of like letting the kids know that in the moment they're doing great things. The end
Yeah,
result may not be perfect, but what they're doing along the way is still fantastic. And you still have to celebrate those things and you have to realize that they're a part of the game too.
yeah, 100%. So, and that's it. Like, it's always, can you find the positive in any situation? It's gonna be there, but how do we? Yeah, we have to. I'm a big believer in reflecting on performances and kind of figuring out not just what went wrong, but where are the positives there.
Absolutely.
So I want to dive into when you were playing, how did you find it in terms of the mental side? Because at that age, at that time, you probably wouldn't have had any exposure to it.
I played multiple sports at decently high levels. I played national level. Pretty much the majority of the sports I've played, I've gone to nationals for. Baseball specifically, I never realized how much it was a mental game. I pitched as a young kid, and I think my cockiness back then was more so than the confidence. But like again, just how bad, like reflecting back on how bad I beat myself up post game, and how bad I like felt because I let my team down, and those reactions that I had, and those different things. And looking now at the kids, I just don't want that for them. Like, to be honest, that's like you made a really good point at the start. Is like you didn't have that at when you were playing sport, and that's what you want to do. And that's really the mission that I've been going at in my life as a coach is I really want the kids to have a better experience than I did. Like, I know that I was in stressful situations, like bottom of the seventh, bases loaded, 3-2 count, those type of situations. And in those, I didn't handle them very well. I know these kids can handle them well if they're told the right things. The old school method of coaching, the bully method, the mean method, our kids don't respond that way to it anymore. And we did. And, luckily we did and we thrived and we played well. But to be honest, it's also exhausting. So if you're dealing with a coach who's like mentally tough on you and is like, we'll say beating you down and that type of thing, by the time you're done your game, because you have to combat their negativity, you're exhausted. You're exhausted. So you're walking off the field regardless, win, lose, or draw, and you're tired. If you walk off and you are positive the entire game, you are giving yourself motivational cues, you are picking yourself up, your coach is there saying, you got this. When you walk off the field, you can probably go out and hang out with your friends. It's a totally different game and it's a totally different way that they walk away. And that's kind of what I wanted to impact more is how the kids walk away from the sport. Not necessarily what they do within it, not their performance. It's like, what are they taking away from the sport? They're taking away that I had fun today and I was with my friends, and not taking away the fact that I went 0 for 4 with 4Ks.
Yeah, 100%. Right. And that's important. And that's what keeps them in sport for longer
It,
and kind of enjoying it. Yeah, for sure. So then at what time did you realize that the mental side of the sport was important and kind of started working in that?
For me, it was when I switched. So I did play, or I went to New York State. I was signed, played junior college in baseball in the States. And my mental health was the reason I came home. Was literally I wasn't in a good place mentally. I didn't have the skills to kind of cope with the added stresses that were happening. Like I was a Canadian in the middle of the States and kind of
Mm,
by myself with nobody around. And it didn't work out very well. And I came back and I did a lot of reflecting on that. And I realized that like I truly believe that if I would have put that piece together, I would have stayed and probably had a pretentious career, but I didn't. And it took me years and years to figure out, who I was as an athlete. And after that, I kind of phased off and went into the rec phase because, you were focused on kind of going pro or at least getting a career out of it. And then
yeah.
eventually you make that switch over. And I truly think the switch was when I realized the biggest difference. So when I started doing R2MR, I literally realized that click. It was like a moment of clarity where I was like, this applies to sport and life and school and relationships. And that was my like aha moment where I started to say, oh, now let's focus a little differently. And that's when I got into powerlifting. And
Right.
for me, I really used and I really focused on the mental side because powerlifting is such a mental game because you literally have to believe in yourself more than anything else to get underneath that bar. And I started doing it myself and then practicing the tools that I learned in R2MR, brought those forward, and it just kind of, I guess, snowballed in a positive way from there for me. But that was my big like epiphany moments. When I came back from the States, it was like I came home not for a physical reason. I didn't come home for anything else. I came home because I mentally couldn't handle it. And it took me probably 15 years to admit that. But at the end of the day, it really helped me grow as a person and as an athlete. And looking back now, I can see like for the kids' perspective, I can add so many skills by just giving them the skills to be able to handle stress outside the game, let
Mhm.
alone what they can include within the game. So it's kind of broadened my perspective when it comes to that. And that's kind of where I am.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I always think that it goes way beyond sport, right? This kind of work that we do in that, like, life is a performance if you think about it. So, can all these skills and tools can be helpful in different areas of life. So,
Well,
I always kind of relate it back to how can this be used at school? How can this be used like when you're older, when you're working and relationships, all those types of things? Because sport will end at some point, but this stuff never will.
no, you're 100% right. And that was pretty much like the moment where I started doing all the volunteer work and all the extra work when it came to mental health was when I realized that like the R2MR principles, the sports psychology principles that have been there for years, they apply to everything. The conversations that we have with our children, the relationships, how we learn in school. So,
Yeah.
like, I've even taken these seminars now that I've talked to kids and I've showed them these are how you would use the big 4+ skills when you were at school. These are the places you could use them and what skills you could use. These are the places that you could use them if you're at home and you're struggling at home and your parents are mad or you're mad with someone and you're trying to ground and find your center.
Yeah.
These are the skills you can use. So I totally totally agree with you. It's more about life skills than
Yeah.
anything else. And I think a lot of baseball coaches, if you watch or if you follow the Instagram state and a lot of the coaches in the States, the little league coaches, you'll see a lot of really good posts talking about we're giving life lessons. We're not just teaching the game. And I think that's what it comes back to as a coach is you have to realize that you're a role model in front of these individuals, regardless if you want to be or not. So your behaviors, how you treat them, and then how you respond to their actions and reactions is going to make a big difference in them too.
Yeah, especially as kids, like that makes such a huge impact. Like they're always watching and they can kind of see how your body language and things like that. So they're always looking for it too. They're looking for that acceptance and reassurance from coaches and parents. So I think for me, I've been really mindful of that, especially since I started working in this space.
Yeah, it's wild when you see a kid throw a pitch and then look to the stands to their parents. And I'm like, there's nobody out there going to help you. You can do this yourself. I believe in you, but you have to believe in you, right? Like that's the big piece that I think we're seeing this generation versus last, because parents are more present now too. Like when we were playing sport, parents weren't around. It was like in the middle of the week and there was very few people around the game. Now it's mostly evenings and there's a lot of parents showing up. So they have that extra stress in general because it's performance stress when it comes to your parents now. You have to have, not only are you pleasing your coaches, are you pleasing your teammates, you now have to do well enough to please your parents.
Yes. No, it brings back memories from me kind of playing soccer, playing rugby, knowing that my parents or somebody else was there watching, right? And I felt I have to play amazing. I have to be perfect and I have to and then I tried too hard and obviously it did not help my performance. So I often perform much better when they weren't there. I speak to athletes today about kind of their parents, and some say that they ban them from coming to watch them and things like that. So, which is
And to be honest,
unfortunate.
that's a good, like, that's really proactive when it comes to kids. If your athlete can get to that point where they can actually say, like, it is unfortunate, but if the kid has enough confidence to say, you know what, this is a negative for me and I want to perform positively, I look at that as like, we would never have the courage to say that as kids. So like the generation that we're speaking to, you and I right now in general, is so much more mature when it comes to mental health that I think doing what we're doing will be a bigger impact, or will make a bigger impact in the long run because the kids understand it.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so you've mentioned R2MR and the big four. Can we take a few minutes to kind of unpack what those tools are, kind of how they could be used?
Yeah. So the big four plus are goal setting, visualization, self-talk, arousal control or diaphragmatic breathing, tactical breathing. We also have the plus, and then the plus, we have a couple of different ones that we work on, like self-awareness and on recovery pieces. But I usually just focus on the original four with the kids for the performance aspect. And the biggest thing we get into is goal setting, for starters, breaks things down into more manageable chunks. So for so many kids, they get into these scenarios and they think, holy crap, I have this big game I have to win. But if you take your game and you break it down into like pieces of pizza, and you're looking and going, if I cut my pizza into 100 pieces, it's not overwhelming for me to eat. But if I don't have a slice in this pizza, it's really overwhelming. Yeah. So breaking it down and working with chunking is what I think we do the most with kids. It's getting them to understand that when things get overwhelming, just break them down into smaller, more manageable chunks so you can handle it. Also, setting a goal sets them up for success because it gets them on that right frame of mind where they know this is what I'm trying to achieve in that moment. We do talk about, again, the different types of goal setting. So we do, your short-term goal setting. And then we also talk about SMART goals. We go through the SMART goals with kids. We actually work on, and I actually did it with my kids this summer, basically broke out the SMART goals and we tested, like, is your goal specific? Is it measurable? Is it attainable? And work your way down and then break it down from there into the chunking aspect and say, okay, how do we now break this down so I achieve those steps along the way, right? So again, very similar to the piece that we talked about earlier when it comes to baseball is the what's important now method, right? That piece that John Schneider, kind of adapted this year. That's where we really focus when it comes to performance for kids. It's like trying to teach them to be goldfish. Forget about the last play and just kind of move on from there. And it really has been working, keeping them focused on the what's important now. When it comes to visualization, I love the visualization scripts. If you have a kid who can actually focus on breathing and do breathing properly and get them in the moment, and you get them to actually visualize, and if they can, bringing in different senses and working in with the groups that I've had, I've started off pretty basic and I've told them like, here's your basic ones. And then eventually we bring in more senses and we build it up and it carries over directly to the field. I did a visualization with my team this year and I closed with, and I know it's a bit ironic, but it happened. I closed with you won provincials. you are winning provincials. This is you on the field celebrating with your team and everything else. And our team had not made the finals at all this year. We won provincials. They got to actually visualize and then got to actually duplicate that moment in real life. There's so much power when it comes to visualization. Every athlete, I think, in the world who actually is high performance uses it. And so many people think it's like, a lot of the kids are like, it's just Huey. I'm just saying. But if you sit down and visualize over and over and over, the success is there, and the stats and numerous different studies over the years I bring in, the free throw one where they visualized free throws versus the shooting, and just bringing in examples and showing the kids that like your heroes are doing this. So let's get you doing it as well. The next one we talk about is self-talk. Self-talk is probably the biggest piece that I work on, in my opinion, when it comes to any of my athletes, because that inner dialogue in your head is detrimental to your performance, or it can be the most positive thing for you. So you're essentially like that coach on your shoulder, hanging out, saying either the right things or the wrong things to yourself. So in that moment, I get the kids to challenge, and I get my athletes to challenge and say, like, test the facts. Is it real? Are you really the worst player in the world? No, you're not, right?
Yeah.
Or would you say it to a friend? Would you say it to a coworker? Would you say it to a teammate? And get down, and I do a kind of like a quick scenario where I get down and I'll say, yeah, I'm such a horrible person. I'm so bad. I'm so this, I'm so that. And then I look at the kids and I'm like, now imagine if I said that to you. And they were like, they're bullies to themselves. And that's what I want them to realize is, like, at the end of the day, nobody's going to believe in you as much as what you should believe in you. And the self-talk piece, will literally take over. I find, like I said, that's the biggest one, in my opinion. That's the Achilles of mental performance, is that negative self-talk. And if the kids can learn to harness that by using the other big 4+ skills with it, I truly think they'll be able to help.
For sure.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to come in there on like that self-talk, because
Absolutely.
it's something that I talk about a lot. Something that we have to be aware of, kind of what is happening. So when you talk about self-awareness, like that's a big part of it too. I just find that being aware of it, and I hear it so often, and I think it just comes out. That's maybe the default way of how we talk to ourselves. Maybe we learn from other people, but yeah, it's important, right? Because your brain is kind of always looking for that danger. It's always trying to keep you safe, and it's natural for us to kind of maybe have those thoughts, but making sure that they're not taking over. And I always say to people, talk more than you listen, because if we listen to that voice and believe it, then obviously we're not going to feel so good. We're not going to perform to the best of our abilities. So I always get them to think about, how do you want to perform and act? And those are the words that we're using, right? And it's all about repetition for me, and building that strength by doing it continuously. Last tool was arousal control. So like breath work, that type of stuff. How do you implement that, especially with like the younger athletes?
Believe it or not, the younger athletes are more receptive than the older ones when it comes to this stuff. Because a lot of the younger athletes still breathe through the diaphragm. So they actually take belly breaths. They're not at a point, because like I've had athletes as young as 7 who I've actually been like had in sessions with me, and like they do breathe through their bellies. So with that, I basically get the kids to like practice their breathing. I use the R2MR methods, and like I said, I'm a master trainer at R2MR, and I've been teaching this course so long that I literally get the kids to like hand on the belly, hand on your chest. How do you breathe? And then I explain to them why. So I'll explain to them, like, if you breathe into your chest and breathe really quickly, you're going to jump up your heart rate, as opposed to slowing it down and opening things up and talking to them on their level. Then I get them down on the floor and I flat out, literally, let's just start with just some mindful breathing. Let's just do some inhale and exhale where you're just focusing on your breath. If they can handle that, then we usually go into box and work some 4s and different realms. But again, just letting the kids know it's about purpose. So all of the big 4+, it's not necessarily the skill you're doing, it's the intent.
Yeah.
So if you are intentionally trying to do something that activates your frontal lobe, where you're no longer thinking with your amygdala, then you are doing the right thing, regardless of what it is. So if you're breathing one breath in, hold for 2, out for 12, and it's this random sequence, but you're thinking about it and you're doing it intentionally, you're already combating that stress response and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And I really, like I said, I truly believe like breath work is the simple, most effective way to regain control in every situation. And it can be used in every situation. It's just a matter of getting them to believe in it and getting them to understand. And a lot of it is buy-in. It's getting them to see that it works. So showing them that like 5 quick breaths into your chest doesn't calm you down versus 5 slow breaths into your belly, or showing them that like a clip of one of their favorite pitchers on the mound, taking that big cleansing breath before they throw and then working your way in from there. We tell our pitchers to literally take a breath between every pitch, literally before you throw every pitch, same as what you would if you were like teaching a sniper, same kind of thing. It's a matter of getting that breath and getting that clarity. And as long as the intent is there, right? With the goal setting, with the visualization, with the self-talk, with the arousal control, as long as the intent is there to activate the thinking part of your brain, we're doing the right thing. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be, breath work that can get you a yoga certificate. It just has to be something that's intentional and it works for the kids.
For sure. So what would you say then to people? Because I hear a lot they do some skills and, I've tried it a couple of times and it doesn't work. I can't do it. What would you say to them in that instance?
So that's negative self-talk. So I actually had one of these in the last course I taught. I have a background in corrections. So I spent 15 years in corrections as well. That's kind of where I got into the D&D aspect. So I still go back and I work with first responders on the continuous basis as well. And I was just talking to a bunch of correctional officer recruits, and one of them came back and actually said, it was like, I tried the box breathing and I panicked. I couldn't do it. I was like, okay, all right. It doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for me. I said, okay, no problem. I said, for starters, the negative self-talk that you're telling yourself it doesn't work is automatically that's not going to work. So we go back to the other skill for that one and just realize that like, if you tell yourself you can do it, you actually focus on doing it, you're probably going to be able to achieve it. But also realize that breath work is a complex thing and it fits everybody differently. If you have asthma, if you have panic because you don't want to hold your breath, those type of things. So what I do basically is go back to just mindful breathing, like bringing them back to absolute basics of inhale. And as you're inhaling through your nose, I get them to like smell like a beautiful flower, and then fill up that belly and just focus on your breath. And as you're exhaling, blow it out through your mouth. I get them like they're blowing out a birthday candle. I do the kids with the birthday candle thing, and get them to blow it out as long as they possibly can, thinking there's a lot of candles on the cake. And at that point, if they can just focus on their breathing, then eventually they can get to the pause and eventually you get to anything else. Mental skills are no different than physical skills. You have, like you talked about repetition. You have to work on them. If you want to get better at visualization, you have to visualize. If you want to get better at breath work, you have to do breath work. That's same thing as if you want to get better at pitching, you have to pitch.
Sure. And it's maybe kind of ties in with a bit of the perfectionism and that kind of stuff, that we want it to be perfect. We feel like it has to be perfect and we can't, make mistakes, or our mind goes off when we're trying to focus on the breathing. But like, that's obviously not the case. So yeah, teaching them kind of how to do it, but just, it's not going to be perfect. But as you said, the intent, and that's important.
It truly is. And we also cover attention control as well. So I don't get into, we'll say, the nitty gritty of it with the kids, but I do actually break it down. And when I teach the full course, we actually do teach it. And we literally explain to them how your brain works and understand that like, you're going to have distractions. Mom's going to wave. You're going to have a moment where you're going to look over. You're going to have a moment where you're going to hear a loud sound and you're going to react to it. Those things are going to happen. So let's build ourselves up and prepare for that with our visualization, with our mindfulness, with our goal setting. and get us in a place where we know those things are going to happen, right? Prepare for the distraction, knowing that if you're going to get distracted, how do I get?
Yeah, and that's a huge thing for me. I think preparation is something that I work on a lot with people, because that's the thing. If you're prepared for different situations and different things, and then you have the tools to use in those situations, then you're not going to panic, right? If we're not prepared, it's the same thing as going in for an exam. If you haven't made that preparation, you haven't studied, then the chances are you're going to panic and your performance isn't going to be as good as you want. So the preparation piece is important. Obviously, a lot of people are doing a lot of preparation in terms of physical work and practicing like the technical and the tactical stuff. But I want more people to focus more on the mental side as well and kind of tie it all together.
And that's the piece that we work on with our pitchers. I do volunteer work at Premier Sports Academy in Paradise, Newfoundland. Fantastic facility. It's an indoor baseball facility. And they were the ones that actually got me in to first started with mental bullpen and talking to the kids. And we did 26 or 27 sessions last year of like 30-minute chats. So It was able to break it down nice and slow. And what we got into was like truly getting them to understand that they already have these skills, right? This is not rocket science. You're not creating, like rewriting the wheel here. You have all these skills. The intent, the fact that you want to do it, the fact that like you're doing it with a purpose, and the fact that you're doing it regularly, like coming up with a recovery plan. How do I bounce back? Knowing that I'm going to have stress. So we had our pre-Canada Games guys this year. Before they pitched Canada Games, I spoke to them all last year. And I told them, I was like, first game in your home, because we hosted Canada Games this year,
Right.
You're going to crap bed. You're going to literally stress that much. You're going to want to literally leave the mound as soon as you go up there. So why not prepare for it now? Why not put yourself in a visualization situation where you can say, I'm going to feel jittery bugs. I'm going to feel my belly. I'm going to feel those sweaty palms. I'm probably going to throw the first 2 pitches out of the zone. So deal with that stress before it happens. Prep for the stress as well as prep for the performance. So prep for what your body is going to give you in that response.
Yeah, love it. Has there been a player or even anybody else in terms of like outside of sport that you've helped in terms of using these skills? Is there a player that you can think of or someone that you can think of that's made like a big shift?
Most of my athletes, since I started doing this, have been super focused. You can see an enormous difference when people are performing. They're walking it, especially powerlifting, because for years, strength sports have been dictated by get angry and lift. And to be honest, I did it and I was successful at it. But again, the exhaustion post meet and like the exhaustion post lift, so like having to like finish your lift and then go back to lift another, even though that intensity just had to come up here to get that. How do you bounce back? And I truly think that all my power lifters learned in the moment that you have to be able to reground. You have to be able to bring everything back. You have to be able to take that on and still deal with it the next one, right? So how do we do that? We found that positive reinforcement, literally taking the positives instead of saying, I can't do this and I'm going to do this in spite of, simply taking it and saying, I can do this regardless of, and going from there and kind of changing that dynamic. And I think that was, we'll say, the biggest impact when it came to my athletes, not really one specific athlete in general, but more we'll say the overall athletes of which I coached when it came to powerlifting. And they truly performed better and then felt better post meet. And that was the big thing for me. It's like, at the end of the day, it's a sport, right? Regardless of how high of a level, unless you're getting paid for it, it's not your job. It's a sport. It's an activity. It's an enjoyment. Why not walk out of it feeling great, as opposed to walk out of it feeling exhausted, beat down, and then that night you're sitting home going, why did I say all those horrible negative things to myself in my head just to get me to lift that one?
Yes, for sure. And there's nothing worse than that kind of regret, right? Of why did I do that? So no, for sure. That's impactful, I think, for probably a lot of people to kind of think about what they're doing, why they're doing it. Are the things that I'm thinking and saying and doing actually helping me go towards where I want to go or be the person that I want to be?
Absolutely. The helpful part is a big thing. I love that word in that moment. It's like, is this helpful? Regardless of what you're telling yourself, if it's right, if it's wrong, if it's true, if it's false, it doesn't matter. Is it helpful?
Yeah,
Is it going to help your performance? And the bottom line is, at the end of the day, no negative response, no matter how small, is going to help your performance when it comes to that. We know, as per your Dotson, any negative response tips you outside that optimal range performance. So why would we put any negative in if we know the positive keeps us there?
sure. And that goes back to that practice and preparation
Yeah.
because, natural state might be to go down that way. So it's being aware of that and kind of making sure that, I don't want to go down that path. Let's keep going this way. You talked about kind of between pitches in baseball, and that's something that I refer to. Like I work with a lot of hockey players, but in
Yep.
terms of the releasing from the last pitch, focusing on the next one, I reference baseball a lot because you see it right between pitches. You'll see them go through their routine. What I have seen when I've been at baseball facilities and watching kids, they take a swing and then they immediately get ready for the next one. So how do you work with them in terms of figuring out a routine that works for them? Is that something that you do? A lot of people might have one already, but again, it's that intent behind it. They're not just rushing it. So how do you help them come up with a routine that is useful and helpful for them?
So I'll take hitting first for an example,
Yeah.
because you kind of use both scenarios, but hitting first, an example. One big thing I get the kids to do is actually focus on their routine, their setup. So I brought that from powerlifting. Again, powerlifting was all about setup because you didn't
Mhm.
get to panic if you focused on your setup, and then eventually the weight comes off and now you're ready to go. If you just go through your routine in your head and talk yourself through it, like using TRIST, right? Task, relevant, instructional self-talk. If we actually use those methods, it works. I've done the same thing when it's come to hitting. It's telling the kids that when they get in a box, their focus is on their setup. Their focus is not on what's happening, where's the pitch going, what's mom doing, what's happening for lunch, what game am I playing later on. It's which foot am I putting in the box first? Which foot goes there? Now, where do I set my hands and my hips? Where am I setting my body up? And by going through that little bit of a setup, that's combated so many stress responses. And it sounds so simple. Like the kids kind of get frustrated and they're like, oh, no, no, and they want to rush. They want to take it. And I'll tell them, like, take your breath, take that big, deep breath, calm yourself, and go through your routine every single pitch. Step out of the box, take that breath, step back in and go through your routine. Step out of the box, take the breath, back in the box, go through your routine. And it goes back to, again, what you talked about. It's the getting in the reps. That's mental reps. That's as much as it is physical because they're going through the performance aspect of it. They're actually doing the setup of getting in the box, but that's mental reps.
Yeah.
They're preparing themselves mentally as opposed to sitting in the box going, holy crap, this pitcher's throwing super hard and I don't know what's going on and what's happening. So that's
Yeah.
one way we combat that when it comes to at the plate. I really try to get the kids to focus on TRIST. I find TRIST really works because it's a distraction. In the moment, we want to get them thinking about something that's productive to the at bat, but not negative to the at bat. So
Yeah.
the one thing that I was thinking that I've been using again is their setup and how do they focus, or even getting them into, if the kid doesn't like a setup, step 1, 2, 3, 4. So like go to stage 1, go to stage 2. What parts of your swing you set up? Going back to pitchers are in control. Pitchers run the game. And I try to get the kids to understand and the athletes to understand that they do. And you are the dictator of how fast or how slow the game goes. If you want to
Yeah.
speed it up, it goes fast. If you want to slow it down, it goes slow. So in the moment, so many of us, because of anxiety, because of our heart rate races when we get stressed, we want to speed things up. I tell the kids, when you feel that heart rate, step off the mound, take a breath, reach down, tie your shoes. Everybody got cleats. Tie your shoes. Have that moment where you're breathing while you're tying your shoes, taking that focus if you're getting too overwhelmed. In between a regular performance, it's the same thing as what you would do if you were in the box. It's stepping on the mound, talking yourself through the delivery, and zoning in and focusing on only the catcher. Going back to like for the love of the game, that, getting that, calm the mechanism, right? You get back to that and you understand that like that's where you want our kids to go. You want them to think about nothing about the stress. You want them to get thinking about what am I supposed to do here? And in that moment, I have found personally one big calming breath, deep calming breath into the belly, actual diaphragmic, along with walking yourself through the procedure, either step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, or directly walking it through a tryst has been what I've been using with the most success, especially with younger athletes.
Mm.
Because again, yes, obviously, as you get older, major league pitchers are thinking about everything. But if you look at Trey Savage, great example of a very mentally well put together athlete. He looks at his catcher. Very rarely he's going to shake him off. And a lot of the kids use that as well. And that's one thing we talk about, even if you get like 15U, 7U, where the catchers are calling the game, let the catchers take control. Don't think. Trust your catcher. That way it takes one less stress response out of you, right? You don't have to worry about what am I throwing next. That's one thing off your to-do list. Your catcher now handles that, or your coach and your catcher handles that. And now your job is to just throw. And I truly think getting them to understand that they're in control in that moment is the biggest part. Because I think they feel like everybody's waiting on them. When at the end of the day, it's like everybody's waiting on, like you're waiting on everybody else.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's important as well, kind of noticing that you can slow down or, take that time if you need it and take that breath. That's where like, baseball is kind of like a unique sport because there are other sports that you don't necessarily have that time.
No.
But that comes with its own challenges, right? Because there may be more time to think. Like I also think about golf. Between shots, you've got more time to think, and that can be detrimental. So I kind of think of it as like a funnel and like focusing. How do we focus in just before the pitch, during the pitch? And then can we let it go kind of a bit wider between pitches so that we're not mentally overworking, that we're not going to be exhausted because we're thinking so much?
Yeah.
Is that something that you see?
Yeah, because that's actually what we talk about in attention control. When we get into attention control, we talk about like sharing the 4 channels. So basically like internal, short focused, panoramic internal, and an external tunnel vision with panoramic external. So you and I are looking at the field, clearing the mechanism, zoning in on the pitch. We throw the pitch. Now we have to widen it back out now and take in everything else. Also in the moment, you have to take in the whole field when you step on the field because you have to take in that atmosphere. You have to get yourself regulated off of it. But then you also got to shut everything down internally as well to be able to say, I don't need to think about anything else. What's important now? This pitch, the next pitch, the next pitch, the next pitch. It's not important what just happened with that at bat. It's not important the last pitch I threw. I can't change it. And so let's move on to the next one. I started doing a lot of referencing the stoicism videos and bringing a lot of that stuff in with the kids. And there's a really good one talking about what can you control. And it's so redundant. It's repetition over and over and over of you control how you play. You control how you play. But I truly think my kids get that more than anything else. Because at the end of the day, that's such an easy way of reminding people to forget what just happened. Like the umpire's calls, the bad plays, the mishaps, all those things just have to be forgotten about so that you can tunnel in on the next thing, right? And your job is to bring that in and then bring that back out. And if you're not in a good mental place, you're not going to be able to do that. That's what we see with the kids once the performance deficit hits. Once they start to tip outside that optimal zone of performance, now they're focusing on the negative. Now they're telling themselves the bad things, they're focusing on the bad things, and then they're doing the bad things. At that point, it's either a reset or they need to come out of the game, right? Like that's the point we get to that. It's like, can you reset? If you can, great. But if you're hyper-focusing on the negative, we know, studies show you're never going to perform to your top.
Okay, so what barriers do you see? Like, if that's one of them, is there anything else in terms of what main challenges mentally do you see?
In youth sport?
Yes.
So, in my opinion, is mental health education. The biggest gap is mental health education. We train the body. Everybody knows how to train the body long before they train the mind. We should be teaching kids as early as in school and at their very first practices that the body and mind is one, and you need to train both the exact same way. And letting the kids know there's the reason why we're doing it. Don't just
Mhm.
tell them to do it. Give them the reasons. Give them the understanding. I help athletes understand like that emotions, focus, and confidence are trainable skills. That's one big piece that I really want to take that I think we need to learn. Like speed and strength can be learned. Visualization and breath work can also be learned. Positive self-talk can also be learned and can be adapted. Also, when we recover from injury, visualization and controlled movement, they rebuild trust in your body. So getting yourself to a point and using the big 4+ skills to actually teach yourself that like, I'm recovering from an injury. I ruptured my Achilles in 2019. It ended my powerlifting. Well, my squatting part of my powerlifting, we'll say. I went on to do bench only afterwards, and that recovery was so hard, and getting back under the bar and getting back into the gym and running and doing all those things. And kids deal with injuries multiple times throughout the season. So being
Yeah.
able to educate them on that and saying like, hey, listen, when you're recovering, these are things that you need to work on while you're recovering. Take the time that you have now, the downtime, because you're recovering, and work on your mental skills. And I think there should be like information sessions and stuff given to that before they return back to play. So understand like also when you come back that you're not going to be able to be at your full capacity, and you're going to have to team it back a little bit and go from there. I also think parents really need to understand patience. And everybody in the world thinks the progress is linear. Everybody thinks the progress is linear. Stress and progress is just like the R2MR model. It's all the same thing. It's literally that inverted U, and it's not. It's mentally or physically, your progress is never or very rarely going to be linear. You're going to have your ups, you're going to have your downs, you're going to have your good days, you're going to have your bad. You got to recognize that kids, this day and age, because of social media and because of scouting and because of so many different things and sport being broadcasted on the internet as well as everything else, they're under so much extra stress that you have to give them an understanding. So when I talk to the parents, I oftentimes use the mental health continuum model, and I show them like when your child is in the red or in the orange stage, at this point, they're not going to hear you. They're
Yeah.
not going to understand you. So having those conversations, that 24-hour rule, right? We talk about the 24-hour rule when it comes to coaches and parents. I totally think the same thing when it comes to parents and kids. Give your kids 24 hours to cool down. Give yourself 24 hours to cool down. That emotion mind conversation is not going to help anyone.
No, I think, that's so much conversation and thing about the car ride home and what would be, okay, so you say 24 hours. Once that 24 hours is up, what should that conversation look like, sound like?
That conversation needs to be, how do you feel about the game? How do you feel? What were your takeaways from the game? So that way I know where my son or daughter or where my athlete or regardless of the gender is. Where do you feel you went wrong? What happened? How do you feel about it? If they feel like they went wrong, okay, where do you feel like you went wrong? Literally, don't tell them, don't lecture them and say, you screwed up at this at bat. You did horrible job at this one. You did this one. No, ask them, what did you take away from the game? Because something that you may have found really significant, the child may not even remember because it might be that insignificant to them.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden you're highlighting a negative response and a negative thing. So keep that conversation simple. Remember, at the end of the day, your parents, you're here to support. I tell people when it comes to like talking to persons in crisis, the same thing as talking to kids. It's be a golden retriever, be that supportive person that comes alongside and literally provides care and support for someone, as opposed to a person who's actually coaching. Let the coaches coach. Let the coaches break it back and break down what they did in their last game and their performance. For you, your job is just to instill hope in your child that you still love them, regardless of the mistakes that they made on the field. Because that's a big thing that I think the kids are learning, is that with the video games and stuff, Everything
Yeah,
is fail or perfection, right? Like you press X and Y, you get a perfect swing. But if you don't, you fail. You don't always fail just because you lose a game of baseball.
for sure.
You might have the best game of your life and you still lose a game of baseball. So, or any sport, to be honest, or anything in life. So, going back and getting our athletes to like learn at an early stage self awareness. Where am I? And then how do I regulate me? Right? Understanding, like, truthfully, how do I get me regulated? And not my parents. My parents aren't regulating me. How am I getting me regulated? And that's the thing. I truly think like there is a certain age that you can only hit the kids here because the onus has to be on the kids to be self aware in that moment to be like, I'm activated. I know that I'm losing my cool right now. And I know that I probably shouldn't get into a conversation with mom and dad.
Yeah,
Right.
for
So like
sure.
even so much as having the space of like recognizing in each other, in the parent and in the child, where each of you are in that conversation and being able to back off if it's too hot. So even with the 24-hour rule, so like if the kid loses a big tournament and they're dwelling over a couple of days, 24 hours is not going to work. They're still going to be hot and heavy after 24 hours. Again, know your child and have that self-awareness piece for you and for them, because self-awareness when it comes to having conversations with people is the most important thing, is understanding where you are emotionally before you even start that conversation.
Yeah. That reminds me, there was a session I did last week, and in that session, I asked the players, how do you know if you've had a good performance or not? And one of their answers is, well, my dad will tell me, right? So it's like, my dad will tell me that I did this wrong or that wrong, or this was good or this wasn't good. So I was trying to get them to kind of think about their own game, because at some point, the parent isn't going to be there to tell them, this is what
Nope.
you did, this is what you need to do. So they have to take ownership of their game and think, for me, how did I perform? And we were thinking about just picking 3 things that they could control in that performance. Those 3 things would mean they were happy with their performance, and they have to be within their control, and therefore they can rate them out of 10. And then, okay, this was a good performance because I did these 3 things to the best of my ability.
I like that.
Instead of, because most people also said, well, I know I didn't play well if I didn't get an assist or I didn't score or we didn't win. So that results piece is always kind of coming back. So that was kind of eye-opening to me, and kind of, yeah, I think we need to work more with parents because they don't get the support that they need, right? So, or the education. So I think for me, that's something I've been trying to do lately, is working more with parents and kind of getting them to understand what they should be saying, or there's difficult times. How do you navigate those difficult conversations?
What I saw this year, and we could probably spend 2 hours on parent conversations just because I've had a history of them. But again, like I never had that support either growing up. So I look at like, how did I feel? That's the biggest thing that like the biggest piece that I try to get the parents to understand in those moments. And if I could give any advice to the parents is ask yourself, how would you feel if you were in their shoes? You just played that game and you lost. And now you're in the car with people who you trust and love and support. And they're telling you that you did horrible things. And you didn't do horrible things. You made mistakes in sport. You made a mistake in sport, and mistakes in sport is the safest place to make a mistake in sport. Why you didn't? Nobody died. Nobody lost their job. You made an error. You made a mistake. You didn't hit the puck right. You didn't hit the ball right. You missed to the left on a shot. All those things don't matter. At the end of the day, they have to realize, would you enjoy getting said this to you if you were a kid in that situation? 99.99% will say no. The other 0.1 will probably say, yeah, well, it was taught to me. But at the end of the day, I still challenge those people. And I still say, yeah. But at the end of the day, how did you feel about being told those things? Like those back door, the backseat conversations, the drive home, it's probably the most important conversation you're going to have with your kid, because in those moments, they're vulnerable, they're beaten down, and they feel embarrassed. And if you can come at them with positivity and understanding and patience, I truly think your child is going to thrive. If you look at, again, going back to referencing Trey Savage, I can promise you, whoever his parents are fantastic parents and fantastic people, because that 22-year-old young man has such a good head on his shoulders, and his respect and how he speaks to the media and everything else. You can tell that he was loved and supported, regardless if he fell 1,000 times or if he fell once. And truthfully, that's what I think our parents need to take away, is that, at the end of the day, they're kids, they're allowed to make mistakes, and they're allowed to make them in sport. And your job is to just support them and not coach them.
For sure. I think thinking about that bigger picture of, you're trying to raise a person with certain skills. What do you want them to get out of sport, right? We're not necessarily focusing on, we want them to get to the majors, right? It's, as a person, what do we want them to be like? And how, sport is very good at building these skills that, are really important in life. So those are the things that you can focus on, and then the results probably will should just take care of themselves. Whatever happens will happen, but controlling
They usually do, to be honest. Very rarely will you see two teams show up to the field. One coach is yelling at a team, the other coach is positively talking to a team. One team has supportive parents, the other one has parents who are being critical and yelling. Which team wins? 9 out of 10. The team with the positive. That's why home field advantage works. Exactly why home field advantage works. Because that positive environment that you're creating is like having a positive coach on your shoulder telling you can do it. The minute that we introduce anything negative, anything critical, or anything to a point where they feel judged, you're losing your athlete. And that's why kids are quitting such a young age.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's finish up with a rapid fire question. Okay. We've been at it for about an hour, so okay. I think we can kind of wrap up here with a rapid fire round. So the first one is, what is one book or resource that has been a game changer for you that you would recommend to athletes, parents, coaches?
If I was going to recommend, I'd say Mind Gym. That's Athlete's Guide to Inner Excellence, Gary Mack. That really fits what we do in R2MR and with mental bullpen. It's mental habits shape physical performance, and mental reps are just as important as the physical reps, and those visualization, those focus skills, they can all be trained. Also, they talk about, how confidence is then built through routine and everything else. So again, I truly think that it reflects exactly what I teach when it comes to mental bullpen. Yeah. The mindset must be trained just like a muscle. And it also aligns with the principles that I pretty much govern myself with, which are the big 4+ principles when it comes to R2MR. And connecting that confidence, control, and focus to measurable outcomes.
Okay. Yeah, I'll put that book in the show notes. So if anyone wants to check it out, feel free to do that. Okay, so what is the most underrated part of mental performance?
So, in my opinion, the most underrated part of mental performance would probably be the negative self-talk. In my opinion, that's the most underrated part. That's the part that people don't focus the most on. You see a lot of breathwork seminars. You see a lot of seminars on visualization. You even see mantra, different stuff. You've had mindfulness yogas. We do a lot of mindfulness activities. But at the end of the day, I really think there needs to be more emphasis on how to combat that negative self-talk. Because truthfully, you say between 300 to 1,000 words a minute to yourself in your head. So if you can literally learn to give those words and have those words being positive, I truly think the rest of it is going to speak for itself. And I'm not just talking about in sport, I'm talking about in life, in your every mistakes in school, especially for the kids in school who are walking through the hallways with those negative messages in their head. If you can teach yourself in that moment to combat those, to stop those, to test the facts, to engage with a positive mindset in those moments, I think that would be the true key to unlocking. Most of the rest of the skills would then follow suit.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Okay, final one. What is your own go-to reset when you're under pressure?
Breath work and music. For me, I'm a big believer in regulating myself off of the music I listen to. I'm very much adapting to that. So using, I usually use box breathing for the most part, or I'll do 8-4-7. And with me, I love having the right kind of music. So if we're home and I'm studying, I'll literally have something in the background that'll be like a focus or white noise or something along that lines that can enhance my focus. If I'm prepping for a bench press competition, I'm going to have things that are going to get me in the right mindset for bench press. Deadlift is going to be completely different because deadlift, I need a lot more intensity. So a little bit more turn up the dial. And so that's kind of how, as an athlete, I've always regulated myself. And it helped as well when I got into corrections because I ended up actually getting, being able to drive back and forth to work and do the self regulation with music. And so that's kind of been my.
Okay, nice. Okay, so my last question for you is, what one message that you would give to an athlete that's currently in a slump, whether it be mentally or physically? They're kind of in a rut, not enjoying it, don't have the motivation. What is one piece of advice that you would give them?
So when I was put off work, I connected with Wired Differently, John Archibald. I'm not sure if you're familiar. And John sent me a bracelet from Wired Differently, and it said, "You're not alone and you never will be." And I've lived by that. And I truly think if that's the one piece of advice I'd give to the athletes, that would be it. Was no matter what you go through, no matter what you think, no matter what you feel, in the moment, it feels like it's the biggest thing in the world and it's the biggest obstacle in front of you, when in reality, it's just a little pebble. And you can handle this, and you're not going to go through this alone. There's going to be supports. You have teams behind you. You have families. You have friends. And everybody who experiences sport and experiences stress experiences in different ways. You're never going to be alone, ever. So you're not alone, and you never will be in any of those mental stress situations. You're not the first, and you won't be the last.
Yeah, great message. I learned that way too late, I think.
Me
I
too.
could have reaching out to people. It's not, a sign of weakness, right? We need people supporting us. So be that person and support other people. But also, if you feel you need to reach out to someone, then do so. Okay, so thank you, Kevin, for sharing your experience, your insight with us. Been such a great conversation. Lots of little gems there. Is there anywhere where listeners can find you online or connect with you for coaching?
Yeah, absolutely. So mentalbullpen.ca, you can actually go into mentalbullpen.ca. We've recently just put our website up. Again, Mental Bullpen is not for profit. It's literally set up more of a community project for me. I don't make any money over the top at it. And I just want to keep the programs affordable and want to hit as many kids as I can. So if you hit their website up, it does have some resources as well, but it also talks about like resources for parents, resources for coaches, athletes. And you can also find me on Instagram as well. And I've also gone through and categorized my Instagram stories so that you can actually see in genres. So if you're an athlete, you can flick through and there's a bunch of different articles and a bunch of different things for athletes. If you're a coach, you can click on the coaches section and it has a bunch of different pods and different things for coaches. And same thing with parents. Because like I said, at the end of the day, the more education we can get from this, the better. So if we get education and understanding, at least then we'll be able to deal with the problem a little bit more effectively. So you can find me at both of those platforms. And I would like to say thank you very much for having me on this week. I really appreciate getting the time, loved our chat, and look forward to in the future.
For sure. Yeah, no, thank you very much. I will again link your details in the show notes so people can click on those, take them to the relevant places. Again, thank you for being on. Listeners, I'm sure you've got so much out of this. Please, if you got something from it, make sure you share it with another athlete, a parent, a coach.
Anyone.
And please, definitely leave comments and share it around. So again, thank you, Kevin. I'm sure there's so much more that we could discuss.
Yeah.
maybe we'll get you back on at some point and we can kind of dive deeper.
Always
So
available.
great. Go Jays, go.
Go Jays, go.